A whisper beneath the waves. Night settles softly around you as you find yourself standing at the edge of a quiet, endless ocean. The air is cool, the sky brushed with faint silver, and the sound of waves reaches you like long, slow breaths drawn from the heart of the earth. You feel the sand beneath your feet smooth and damp, as though countless tides have passed here carrying secrets older than memory. For a moment you simply listen to the rhythmic hush of the sea, to the wind, moving gently through the darkness until you sense that something waits far below the surface, just out of sight, just beyond understanding. It is here in the soft lull of the ocean's breathing that the first hints of Lemuria begin to rise like distant echoes. You close your eyes, and the world shifts. Suddenly, you are no longer standing on the beach of the present day, but drifting through the early 19th century, when naturalists, geographers, and explorers struggled to understand the world's scattered forms of life. They moved through archives of old ship logs, sketched maps by candlelight, and pieced together strange puzzles left by nature herself. What they found did not seem to fit any known rule. It was as if the earth had once been arranged differently, as if some hidden land had shaped the migrations of animals and the movement of ancient peoples. You imagine these early scientists standing over large tables maps, unfurled before them, tracing the strange distribution of species across the world. Their fingers glide from Madagascar to India, then across to Southeast Asia, noticing patterns too perfect to ignore. Why, they wondered, did certain creatures appear in far-flung regions, separated by thousands of miles of open sea? Why did lemurs, delicate wide-eyed primates, exist in Madagascar and parts of India, yet nowhere in between? Why did ancient plants appear in isolated corners of the Indian Ocean as though broken pieces of a larger whole? The room grows dimmer and the fog around you thickens. It is in this haze that the idea first emerges. Perhaps a land once connected these regions, a land now swallowed by the sea. You watch the theory form like a faint outline beneath the water, a land that once stretched where waves now roll endlessly, a land that might have shaped the migration of early species, a land that once breathed warm winds across the Indian Ocean before vanishing without a trace. You feel the weight of that early wonder, the excitement of minds piecing together a hidden history. But with wonder comes confusion, and soon questions spill like currents, shifting under the surface. Standing again on the quiet shoreline of the present, you lift your gaze to the constellation-dotted sky. The earth has reinvented itself countless times, you know. Continents drift, oceans rise, mountains crumble, and the idea that a vast land could disappear is not as impossible as it first seems. The ocean is ancient. It remembers everything, even when we do not. As you listen, the waves begin to tell you more stories of later explorers, scholars, and mystics who breathed life into the notion of Lemuria. For them, the lost continent was no mere scientific hypothesis, but a place shimmering between myth and possibility. Some described a warm, verdant land full of early life. Others believed it was humanity's cradle, a place where our earliest ancestors lived before the sea rose to claim their world. And still others imagined a civilization flourishing long before Egypt or Sumer, long before writing or known history, a culture wiped clean, leaving only faint whispers scattered across time. You feel a soft pull inside you, the same curiosity that must have stirred those long-ago thinkers. Could it be that beneath the Indian Ocean lies something more than volcanic ridges and drifting plates, Could it be that fragments of an ancient land and perhaps people still sleep beneath the waves? But as quickly as that wonder rises, you also sense the quiet voice of skepticism. You imagine geologists examining layers of basalt from the ocean floor, tracing tectonic shifts, and explaining that continents cannot simply sink whole. You see modern researchers mapping deep-sea plateaus and identifying them not as shattered continents, but as volcanic formations. They shake their heads gently at the old theory of Lemuria, calling it a beautiful idea, but scientifically impossible. And yet, even as science explains one puzzle, the sea seems to offer another. There are still oddities, still questions that have not been fully answered. Islands with peculiar rock formations, underwater plateaus that defy easy classification, species that migrated in unexpected ways, ancient myths describing lands lost to floods spread across cultures separated by oceans, each one a glimmer, a faint thread connecting the past to something deeper, something just beyond reach. You sense the tension between certainty and mystery, as if you are standing on the boundary between land and sea, 1 foot in what is known, 1 foot in what is forgotten. This is the place Lemuria lives, neither proven nor disproven, suspended like a quiet dream in the depths of human imagination. As the moon rises higher, its light painting soft ripples across the water, you begin to feel that this mystery is not simply about a lost continent. It is about humanity's longing for origins, for connection, for stories that bind us to the deep past when the world felt vast and full of secrets. Perhaps that is why the idea has lingered for so long, why the name Lemuria still stirs something gentle and ancient in the heart. You breathe slowly, watching the shimmering horizon. The scientific idea that gave birth to Lemuria may have faded, but the mystery remains, taking new shapes across cultures and centuries. Some see it as a memory of ancient floods, others as a metaphor for a forgotten era in human history. And some, quietly and without certainty, still wonder whether an unknown land once rose where the ocean now lies. A soft breeze moves past you, carrying the scent of salt and the faint cry of a distant seabird. The waves roll in with a slow, steady rhythm, as if urging you onward, deeper into the mystery, deeper into the story. You take one last look at the moonlit sea, sensing that the next step awaits just beyond the shoreline, waiting in the warm winds of the ancient world. For now, you allow the quiet of the night to settle in your chest, calming and cool. In the distance, something stirs the echo of an old theory that once captivated the scientific world and sparked one of the most enduring legends of all time. The forgotten theory of lost land bridges. You find yourself drifting slowly through a dawn-lit haze, the air warm and touched by the scent of distant rain. As the soft glow of morning spreads across an old map room, one filled with weathered charts and heavy wooden cabinets, you begin to sense the early roots of the Lemuria mystery taking form. You are surrounded by the quiet hum of history, the gentle rustle of yellowing pages, and the subtle awareness that this is a place where ideas once blossomed like fragile seedlings in the fertile minds of early naturalists. Before the age of satellites, before seismic maps traced the dance of continents, scientists relied on what they could observe with their own eyes, the shapes of coastlines, the paths of migrating birds, the fossil beds exposed by monsoon rains. And as you lean closer to an old map spread across a wide oak table, you see what they once saw, pieces of a world that did not quite add up. Across the Indian Ocean, Madagascar lies like a solitary guardian, shaped by ancient winds and currents. India, with its massive sweep of land, stretches toward the same waters. And yet something is missing, some invisible thread between them that early thinkers could almost feel as if it vibrated faintly from the sea itself. They noticed, for example, that certain species existed in both places, but nowhere in between. Lemurs, the namesake for what would later be called Lemuria, lived in Madagascar and India, but the long expanse of open water between the two regions held no record of their passage. As you study the map, you feel the subtle tension that must have stirred those early researchers. How could fragile animals cross thousands of miles of ocean? Why did ancient plants appear scattered across regions as though blown from the seeds of a lost world? These questions were not idle speculation. They were puzzles that gnawed gently at the scientific community, inspiring a quiet sense of wonder. You watch as one naturalist, perhaps sitting by lamplight, perhaps listening to the rustling night winds outside a coastal station, draws a faint outline across the ocean, a hypothetical landmass, a possible bridge, something that once existed and then slipped beneath the waves. Another draws a second line suggesting a chain of islands now swallowed by the sea. Over time, these sketches of lost land bridges become more detailed, more confident, as though the land they represent has begun to solidify in the imagination. You feel the spark of realization that must have lit their minds. If continents could rise, could they not also fall? If seas could shrink, could they not also swell? And in the absence of modern geological knowledge, the idea of a vanished land connecting distant regions felt not only possible, but reasonable. Slowly, the map room fades, and you find yourself floating above a quiet ocean once more. It stretches endlessly beneath you, a shimmering surface, masking its ancient secrets. The water is unusually calm, and the early morning sun lays a soft path of gold across it. You sense the allure this ocean must have held for explorers, a place where land might have existed long before memory. Yet, as peaceful as this world feels, it also fills you with subtle questions, the kind that press gently at the boundaries of understanding. Even today, the Indian Ocean's floor holds mysteries, plateaus, that look like fragments of something larger, ridges that stretch in peculiar directions, and volcanic formations that seem almost too symmetrical to be accidents of nature. The earliest scholars did not have the benefit of this deep knowledge, but they sensed its shadow all the same. Back in the quiet of the map room, a feeling of awe grows in your chest. Those early scientists believed something profound, that the Earth itself was a storyteller offering clues in fossils and coastlines, in the dance of species across continents. And they were trying to interpret that story without the tools we now possess. But as with all great mysteries, wonder soon tangled with doubt. New evidence emerged. Fossils spoke of broader migrations that did not require a vanished continent. Geological surveys revealed that ocean floors were too young, too volcanic to hide a sunken land of great antiquity. The Earth's crust behaved not as a static stage, but as a drifting, shifting mosaic. What once seemed a gentle explanation, the idea of land bridges began to crumble in the face of better understanding. You stand quietly absorbing the realization that these early theories, once so compelling, were slowly fading from the scientific conversation. As the concept of plate tectonics emerged, the Earth revealed new rules. Continents drifted across oceans like ancient ships. Species traveled in ways far more complex than previously imagined. Suddenly, the land bridges that once connected entire regions looked more like hopeful sketches than geological truths. Still, you do not feel disappointment. Instead, you sense admiration for the curious minds who form these ideas with limited tools and boundless imagination. Their theories were stepping stones, bridges themselves, leading toward deeper truths about the earth. You breathe slowly as you return to the shoreline between night and dawn. The tide slides in gently inches at a time, smoothing the sand as though erasing the footprints of earlier thinkers. The theories of lost land bridges were never proven, but they carried the seed of an idea that refused to die, the notion that something once existed where the sea now lies. Even today, the Indian Ocean holds whispers of that early speculation. Some wonder whether ancient maps copied and recopied for centuries contain faint traces of lands now gone. Others propose that rising sea levels at the end of the last ice age may have swallowed coastal settlements, giving birth to memories of great lands washed away. And a few still cling to the idea of an ancient continent, not exactly as the early scientists imagined, but something more symbolic, a memory embedded in myth rather than geology. You feel the gentle pull of possibility, that soft space between what is known and what is merely imagined. Science dispelled the idea of Lemuria as a physical land bridge, yet the mystery persisted, reshaped by each generation. It slipped from the hands of naturalists into the myths of poets, the stories of explorers, and the visions of mystics. And in the warm winds of southern India, on coastlines shaped by monsoon and memory, another name for this lost land, took root, a name preserved through ancient Tamil stories, epics, and poems that whisper of a great civilization drowned by the sea. You hear that whisper now carried on a salt-tinged breeze. Kumari Kandam. It waits for you in the next part, deep in the myths of an ancient people whose history stretches farther back than memory. Ancient Tamil legends of Kumari Kandam. The night is warm as you step into a landscape shaped by ancient monsoon winds. The sky above you glows with the faint orange of distant lanterns, and the rhythmic hum of the Indian Ocean gently fills the air. You stand on the southern tip of India, where Tamil Nadu meets the sea, and the waves here do not merely break, they whisper. They carry the weight of old stories told by poets, priests, travelers, and wandering sages for more than 2,000 years. As the tide draws near your feet, you feel something stir beneath the surface of time. These are the shores where the legend of Kumari Kandam begins. Long before the Western world imagined Lemuria, long before naturalists puzzled over land bridges, the Tamil people already held a memory, deep, poetic, almost dreamlike, of a vast land that once stretched far into the Indian Ocean, a land of kings and scholars, a land of learning heroism and unrivaled beauty, a land swallowed slowly by the rising sea. You breathe in listening as the warm wind carries voices from an age beyond recorded history. In the ancient Tamil Sangam literature, texts revered like sacred pearls, you encounter passages that feel like fragments from a forgotten world. They speak of lost academies of poets, of flourishing cities, of fertile plains now claimed by the water. The poems are soft but vivid, describing the slow, sorrowful retreat of the shoreline as if the land itself mourned its own disappearance. One tale tells of a mighty kingdom ruled by queens of extraordinary wisdom, their palaces gleaming beneath the tropical sun. Another recounts scholars gathering in legendary sangams, great literary assemblies where philosophy, astronomy, medicine, and art flowed as richly as the region's rivers. Some poems hint at battles fought against invading forces from the North Battles, now believed to have occurred not on the present Indian coast, but on land long lost to the sea. As you listen, you feel astonishment rising slowly like a tide of wonder. How could a culture preserve memories of a vanished land for thousands of years? How could poems so ancient describe geological events with such clarity, floods, earthquakes, the creeping advance of the ocean? And then comes the puzzling detail that scholars have debated for decades. The location of the earliest Tamil Sangams is said to have been far south of the present Indian coastline, in a region depicted not as mythic metaphor, but as an actual living landscape. According to these traditions, the first Sangam flourished on a vast landmass, eventually engulfed by the sea, forcing its survivors northward. What modern scholars see as symbolic, ancient poets treated as memory. You walk deeper into this mystery as the moon climbs higher above the water. The idea that an entire civilization, and not merely scattered villages, once stood where the waves now roll, is breathtaking. And yet this belief is not confined to myth alone. Archaeological excavations along India's southeastern coast have revealed submerged structures, pottery fragments, and ancient shorelines now lying dozens of meters beneath the water. Though none of these findings confirm the existence of Kumari Kandam, they ignite curiosity, as if each artifact is a whisper from the deep urging humanity to look closer. Scholars throughout the 19th and 20th centuries sought explanations for Tamil traditions, and several theories emerged. Some believed the myths referred to real geological events during the last ice age, when rising seas drowned extensive coastal plains across the world. Others thought the stories symbolized cultural movements, the loss of kingdoms, the migration of peoples, the collapse of early civilizations. A few more daring researchers speculated that fragments of an ancient landmass, perhaps related to early Gondwanan geology, may lie buried beneath the Indian Ocean. More speculative theorists claimed that Kumari Kandam was not merely a regional legend, but the true origin of humanity, an ancient cradle from which early cultures spread across the world. They pointed to linguistic patterns connecting Tamil with distant languages to maritime traditions older than many ancient civilizations, and to the remarkable antiquity of Dravidian culture itself. You find yourself weighing these ideas gently, carefully, as though holding fragile shells washed ashore by the tide. There is evidence of early humans living in South India tens of thousands of years ago. There are megaliths, stone tools, and enigmatic coastal settlements. But nothing definitively reveals a lost continent or a vanished super-civilization beneath the waves. And so you return to the poems, the oldest in Tamil history, looking for clues. Strikingly, they do not speak of Lemuria or mythical realms beyond imagination. They speak of land of earth, of shorelines retreating. They speak of migration caused by the ocean's rise, the same global phenomenon that reshaped coastlines from Southeast Asia to Northern Europe at the end of the Ice Age. You begin to sense the quiet dignity of these stories, not as fantasy, but as memory woven into myth. A community witnessing its homeland sink slowly beneath rising waters would carry that trauma generation after generation. It would sing about the lost lands, teach their children the sorrow of what once existed, and inscribe the tale in poetry, so it would not fade. But in the centuries that followed, another layer of mystery formed. As Lemuria entered Western imagination through natural history and later esoteric philosophy, Some Tamil scholars saw an unexpected connection. They began to speak of Kumari Kandam and Lemuria as reflections of one another, different names for possibly the same ancient land lost beneath the sea. This merging of science myth and cultural memory created a modern legend that still thrives today. Yet even with all these threads, no definitive archaeological evidence has surfaced. No stone temples rise from the seafloor. No preserved cities have been found beneath the Indian Ocean's shifting sands. The sea keeps its secrets well, and so despite beautiful stories and compelling hints, the truth remains out of reach. Kumari Kandam lingers as a dream at the edge of history, a dream held alive by poetry, tradition, and the undeniable human longing for deep connection to an ancient past. You stand again on the moonlit shore, letting the warm wind brush against your face. You can almost hear the voices of the ancient poets chanting softly across the waves. Their words, carried through time, suggest that something was lost here, something vast, something cherished. But the exact nature of that loss remains hidden beneath the ocean's eternal breath. As the tide rises slightly, washing over your feet, a gentle reflection emerges. Perhaps the legend preserves not the memory of a literal continent, but of a people's profound relationship with land, sea, and time itself. Perhaps the songs of Kumari Kandam echo the trauma of ancient floods woven into stories that kept the past alive long after the waters rose. Still, a question lingers at the edge of your thoughts, soft but persistent. What if the poets remembered something real, something older than we think, something waiting beneath the Indian Ocean, untouched, unseen? The waves seem to murmur an answer, but the sound fades into the night as you turn toward the next chapter of your journey, where Western mysticism, spiritual longing, and the dream of Lemuria become intertwined in unexpected ways. The rise of Lemuria in Western esotericism. The evening deepens around you like a velvet curtain, and you find yourself wandering through a quiet European city at the end of the 19th century. Gas lamps glow softly along narrow streets, and a cool mist curls around their pale halos. Horse-drawn carriages move slowly over cobblestones, their wheels clicking in a steady, hypnotic rhythm. Somewhere in the distance, a clock tower strikes gently, each chime echoing through the fog as though time itself has grown drowsy. You slip into a warm parlor lit by amber lamps and the soft crackle of a fire. Heavy books line the walls, their spines decorated with gilded symbols and mysterious titles. A group of thinkers gathers here, philosophers, occult scholars, and seekers of hidden truths. They speak in low tones, sipping tea while discussing the unseen forces of nature and the forgotten histories of the world. Their minds hum with curiosity, trapped between the rigidity of Victorian science and the yearning for something deeper, more ancient, more mystical. It is here in these dimly lit salons that Lemuria transforms from a scientific hypothesis into something far more expansive. You listen as a bearded philosopher recounts early zoological theories about a lost land bridging the Indian Ocean. But he speaks not like a naturalist, he speaks like a poet. Behind him, a globe twirls slowly, and his fingertip glides over the Indian Ocean as though revealing a hidden truth. Another guest leans forward and muses aloud. What if this vanished land was not only a place of animals, but a cradle of ancient humanity? The question hangs in the dim air like a drifting spark. Soon the conversation deepens. A woman in elegant Victorian dress tells of her readings in spiritual texts where sages speak of forgotten continents, civilizations, erased by cosmic cycles and human beings in earlier stages of evolution. She opens a book filled with diagrams of subtle energies and unseen realms. Her voice is soft calm, full of wonder. As she speaks, the fog outside the windows thickens, and it feels as though the world is holding its breath. You close your eyes, listening to their voices blend with the crackling fire. Slowly, another figure emerges from memory, Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, founder of the Theosophical movement. In the final decades of the 1800s, she reshaped Lemuria into a mystical continent inhabited by humanity's earliest root races, beings more ethereal than physical, who existed before written history. Whether one agrees with her ideas or not, you recognize the profound influence they held over generations, seeking spiritual meaning beyond the rigid confines of Victorian rationalism. In Blavatsky's worldview, Lemuria was not doomed by plate tectonics or natural disaster alone. It was swept away by vast cosmic cycles, its people ascending into different spiritual states. She imagined tall, luminous beings, early humans attuned to the earth itself, civilizations that understood forces modern science had yet to name. Her writings were complex, layered with myth, esotericism, and symbolism. But to those gathered in small drawing rooms filled with incense and candlelight, they offered a sense of ancient continuity, a belief that humanity's past was far older, far stranger, and far more interconnected than scholars admitted. You feel a strange mix of awe and puzzlement rising within you. How quickly a scientific theory evolved into a vast spiritual cosmology, how easily the idea of a lost land resonated with a cultural longing for origins that felt deeper than archaeological shards. These Victorian mystics were not merely inventing stories. They were searching for meaning in a changing world, a world where industrial machines roared, ancient traditions faded, and the boundaries of knowledge felt simultaneously too narrow and too uncertain. Yet even as fascination grew, questions followed. Could Lemuria, as portrayed in theosophical teachings, truly have existed? Could early humans have been spiritual beings evolving through subtle realms long forgotten? Or were these visions simply allegories for human consciousness, symbolic descriptions mistaken for literal history? You watch as a few skeptical scholars in the gathering shake their heads gently. They argue that Blavatsky's Lemuria contradicts geology, biology, and the known timeline of human evolution. Others counter that science itself is incomplete, that the Earth's deep past may still hold truths unexplored. The debate unfolds slowly, respectfully, with a quiet tension weaving through the room like a thin thread. No one raises their voice. No one insists on certainty. The atmosphere remains gentle, contemplative, almost dreamy, exactly the sort of environment where mystery thrives. The fog rolls against the window panes as if trying to enter the room. You sense that the fascination with Lemuria in these circles was not truly about physical landmasses or geological evidence. It was about wonder. It was about the human desire to locate our beginnings in a place more magical than mere sedimentary layers. It was about imagining a forgotten chapter of civilization, one that held wisdom modern society had lost in its pursuit of industry and logic. And so Lemuria grew. It spread from theosophical circles into early New Age thought, into occult literature, into speculative anthropology, and into the dreams of those who felt a yearning for ancient knowledge. Books were written describing Lemurian temples, crystalline technologies, forgotten languages and spiritual practices said to predate all others. Entire mythologies formed around this vanished land, each version different, yet linked by a common thread, a belief that something once existed and was lost to time. But even as these ideas blossomed, no definitive evidence emerged. No ancient texts describing Lemurian cities, no fossils proving an unknown civilization, no ruins rising from the Indian Ocean to confirm the legends. Theories multiplied, but physical proof remained elusive. And slowly you realize that this is the heart of the mystery, why Lemuria remains suspended between possibility and imagination. Modern scholars dismiss the esoteric Lemuria as a cultural artifact of the Victorian era, a reflection of spiritual longing rather than historical truth. But even skeptics acknowledge the deep symbolism embedded within it, our search for origins, our fascination with lost worlds, our enduring hope that beneath the surface of history lies something grander than we yet understand. You exhale softly as you step back out into the misty street. The gas lamps flicker gently, illuminating the stones at your feet. The voices of Victorian mystics fade behind you, replaced by the soft rustling of leaves in a distant park. Yet the idea of Lemuria remains hovering like a pale lantern in the fog, an intersection of myth science and spiritual imagination. Ahead of you, the night reveals a new path, one leading deep beneath the Indian Ocean itself, where modern geology has uncovered vast, submerged plateaus and enigmatic formations that continue to stir echoes of the old theory. Geological mysteries beneath the Indian Ocean. Night folds around you like a quiet blanket as you drift once more toward the Indian Ocean, the great basin whose depths have fueled so many legends and speculations. A soft breeze brushes along your face, carrying with it a cool saltiness and the faint scent of minerals. This time, you are no longer standing on a shoreline or hearing stories from ancient poets. Instead, you begin to descend slowly, peacefully, into the hidden world beneath the waves. The surface fades into shimmering moonlit ripples and then into a blue twilight that deepens with every passing moment. As you sink gently, untouched by pressure or cold, you sense the quiet pulse of the earth itself. Beneath you lies a terrain few have ever seen: mountain ranges drowned in silence, volcanic plains stretching into darkness, ridges illuminated only by faint bioluminescent glimmers drifting like tiny stars. This is where the earliest scientific whispers of Lemuria were born, not from myth, but from the puzzling shapes hidden in the ocean's floor. Your feet touch down upon the top of a submerged plateau. The seafloor is uneven, sculpted by currents and ancient forces, yet the shape beneath your hands feels unexpectedly solid old, as if it belonged to a different age. You begin to explore, letting your fingers glide along rough basalt, then smooth layers of mineral deposits that formed slowly over millions of years. It is here that you feel the first stirrings of wonder. Because the Indian Ocean does not simply conceal volcanic ridges and young oceanic crust, as some might expect. It holds structures far larger and stranger, plateaus the size of small continents, some rising 3 kilometers above the seabed. And one of them, the Kerguelen Plateau, has long carried the haunting nickname, the Lost Continent of the Indian Ocean. You stand upon a vast stretch of it, now sensing its immensity. Scientists have mapped it carefully and found that parts of it contain granite rock, typically found in continents, not in oceans. Other sections are thick with basalt, pointing to massive volcanic eruptions that shaped it tens of millions of years ago. A quiet question rises. Could this be the fragment of an ancient land, something that once stood above the waves before, sinking into the depths? But as soon as the question forms, another detail arrives, one that puzzles you even more. The Kerguelen Plateau is far too old to match human history, yet far too complex to dismiss entirely. Parts of it were once above sea level, forming islands connected by shallow land bridges. Scientists believe birds nested here, plants took root, and ecosystems flourished long before sinking again. You walk across the shadowy plain and feel a sense of mild astonishment. Even if this was not Lemuria, it was something that defies simple explanation, something that lived and died in deep time. The scene shifts and you drift toward the Mascarene Plateau, a different structure, north of Kerguelen. This one is younger, yet equally intriguing. You glide above ridges and seamounts shaped by ancient volcanic activity. Mauritius Réunion and Rodriguez Three Islands, forming a triangle, rise from its edges like the final surviving peaks of a long-lost massif. Scientists studying the rocks beneath Mauritius have discovered zircon crystals billions of years old, far older than the island itself. These crystals suggest that fragments of ancient continental crust lie buried deep beneath the volcanic surface. Once again, the ocean floor presents a whisper, an anomaly, a reminder that the earth keeps stories even when humans forget. You pause suspended above a shimmering valley and sense a feeling of awe drifting through you. These submerged formations do not prove Lemuria's existence, yet they challenge the simplicity of earlier dismissals. They show that continents can break apart, fragments can sink slowly over eons, and ancient land can vanish beneath the sea without leaving easily interpreted clues. But as this wonder rises, so too does the voice of skepticism. Modern geology, powered by plate tectonics and satellite imaging, explains these formations through volcanic hotspots, mantle plumes, and the slow drift of continents that once formed the supercontinent Gondwana. According to scientific consensus, none of these submerged plateaus fit the timeline of human myth. None could have hosted civilizations or early humans. The granite found in the Kerguelen Plateau, ancient fragments of Gondwanan crust incorporated into volcanic eruptions millions of years before humans walked upright. The zircon crystals beneath Mauritius, remnants of buried continental fragments broken off long before mammals evolved. The Mascarene Plateau, a volcanic construct, not a sunken kingdom. You stand quietly as the seafloor around you settles into silence. The explanations feel solid, grounded, and supported by decades of research. Yet the sense of mystery does not fade entirely. For even now scientists admit that the Indian Ocean hides features not fully understood. Some plateaus have shapes that look disturbingly like truncated fragments. Some seamounts rise like the ghostly outlines of drowned mountains. And the oceanic crust here behaves in ways that defy easy categorization, thick in places where it should be thin where it should be thicker, warped by forces still being studied. And then there are the questions tied not to geology but to memory. Ancient Tamil legends of lost land find quiet resonance with the factual submergence of coastal plains. Polynesian stories of drowned islands echo in the vastness of the Indian and Pacific Oceans. The seafloor holds scars of megafloods, landslides, and sudden inundations that shaped human migrations in ways still being uncovered. You glide slowly across the seafloor, feeling the paradox of this place. Science tells you these formations are natural volcanic tectonic, detached from human history. But the human spirit senses something else as well, the possibility that memory, myth, and geology might overlap in subtle ways, yet to be understood. Perhaps the legends of Lemuria are not literal recollections of a continent-sized landmass. Perhaps they are echoes of smaller lands drowned during ancient climatic shifts. Perhaps they are cultural memories of vanished coastlines, forgotten islands, or migrations that carried early humans across now submerged lands. Or perhaps they are something deeper still, something rooted in the human longing to belong to a story older than archaeology, older than fossil beds, older even than written language. The ocean floor begins to darken as volcanic ridges rise around you like sleeping giants. You hear nothing but your own steady breath and the faint hum of the earth beneath layers of basalt and buried crust. As you slowly ascend back toward the surface, the light grows brighter, and the ocean above you shimmers with silver ribbons. The mystery of the deep remains unresolved, not dismissed, not proven, simply resting silently within the earth's oldest bones. You break the surface with a slow breath, welcoming the night air once more. Ahead of you lies another enigma, one not of geology, but of biology, a land whose plants and animals preserve secrets scientists still struggle to explain. Madagascar, a living relic of ancient Earth. Madagascar, a biological enigma. A soft curtain of morning mist rises around you as you drift toward a vast ancient island shaped by millions of years of solitude. The Indian Ocean stretches in quiet blue sheets, its surface smooth and glass-like beneath the pale dawn sky. As you travel across the calm waves, a shape emerges on the horizon, dark, immense, and still. It grows slowly, like a memory returning, until the rugged coastline of Madagascar rises before you. You step onto the island gently, as though entering a sanctuary. The air is fragrant with unfamiliar scents, orchids releasing subtle sweetness, damp earth layered with decades of fallen leaves, and the fragrant oils of towering baobab trees. The forest hums with life, a soft chorus carried through the undergrowth rustling leaves, distant calls, the flutter of unseen wings. Everything feels alive in a way that is ancient, unhurried, and deeply patient. It doesn't take long before you sense that Madagascar is not simply another island. It is a world unto itself, a biological puzzle, a living remnant of something older than the continents that surround it. You move deeper into the forest, your footsteps muffled by thick moss. Sunlight filters through the canopy in soft gold beams, illuminating creatures that seem almost dreamlike. A wide-eyed lemur leaps gracefully from branch to branch, watching you with an expression both curious and cautious. Its presence alone stirs something inside you, because even now the distribution of lemurs remains one of the key mysteries that once inspired the idea of Lemuria. How did these animals come to exist here and in parts of India, but almost nowhere else? Why does Madagascar feel like a self-contained vault of life, holding species that appear isolated from the evolutionary paths of neighboring continents? As you follow a winding trail, you begin to understand why early naturalists were so captivated. Long before they knew of continental drift or tectonic plates, they observed peculiar patterns. Why did plants shaped like their Indian cousins grow only on this distant island? Why did ancient birds, now extinct, evolve here into forms found nowhere else? Why did so many species appear to be echoes of a world that no longer existed? Standing beneath the arching roots of a massive fig tree, you feel the awe that must have stirred those early thinkers. They imagined Madagascar as the surviving tip of a larger landmass, a once vast region that connected the island to India, Sri Lanka, and even Australia. Lemuria to them was not yet a mystical land. It was a simple, elegant explanation for this extraordinary biological puzzle. The idea was beautiful. It was logical. And for many years it seemed entirely possible. But as you listen to the forest breathing around you, you also begin to sense the turning tide, how discoveries slowly unraveled the simplicity of the early theory. Modern science tells a more complex story, that Madagascar broke away from India over 80 million years ago, drifting like a great wooden ship through ancient seas. The creatures on its surface evolved in isolation slowly, with no influence from neighboring lands. The lemurs that captured scientific imagination may have arrived by drifting on vegetation from Africa long after the continents parted. Yet doubts remain small ones, subtle ones like faint footprints left in damp soil. How could delicate animals survive an ocean crossing of hundreds of miles on floating vegetation? How could so many species diverge in such intricate ways on opposite sides of the Indian Ocean? Why are some genetic patterns between Madagascar and South Asia so unusually old? As you stand in a clearing bathed in golden light, these puzzles rise around you like quiet murmurs. Even today, the island challenges researchers with fragments of deep-time biological history that do not fit neatly within our current understanding. You wander farther, hearing the call of the Indri a lemur, whose voice echoes through the forest like a haunting song. Its call rises in long, wavering notes, ancient and melancholic. You close your eyes, letting the sound wash over you. There is something profoundly old in that voice, something that speaks of worlds that once flourished and vanished long before human memory began. Here in the shade of enormous baobabs, you recall the words of modern biologists who describe Madagascar as a museum of evolution, a place preserving ancient lines of life that have disappeared everywhere else. But even with sophisticated tools, genetic analysis, fossil dating molecular clocks, some evolutionary paths remain elusive. The fossils of early lemurs are sparse. Genetic diversification appears older than expected. Some species appear on distant continents in patterns that defy simple explanation. You feel that mixture of wonder and uncertainty stirring within you, again the same sensation that arises whenever nature reveals just enough to tempt deeper curiosity, but not enough to offer a final answer. Scientists agree on much. Madagascar is not a remnant of Lemuria. It is not a sunken continent or a fragment of a lost civilization. Its species evolved through isolation, migration, and chance. Yet some admit quietly that parts of its evolutionary history still puzzle them, that there are gaps in the fossil record, anomalies in DNA, and missing chapters in the story of early primates. You crouch beside a calm, clear stream and dip your fingers into the water. The ripples widen gently, and in their movement you imagine the long-forgotten landscapes that once brushed against Madagascar coastal plains, now submerged islands, now eroded river systems that no longer exist. Perhaps somewhere in those vanished lands, early creatures traveled paths now hidden beneath waves and sediment. You rise slowly, feeling that quiet reflection settle in your chest. The mystery is not whether Lemuria existed as a physical continent. Modern geology suggests it did not, but whether the legends of lost lands might preserve echoes of real ancient worlds. Worlds shaped by storms, floods, drifting continents, and the passage of deep time. Madagascar, in its isolation, stands as a reminder. It shows how life can cling to forgotten corners of the earth, evolve in silence, and preserve secrets older than civilization. It suggests that even when we map the world, something remains unmapped, hidden in the relationships between species, in ancient patterns of migration, in the faint memories carried in folklore and myth. As a warm breeze brushes through the forest, you take one final look at the lemurs, leaping between branches, their movements graceful and haunting. They are living fragments of an ancient puzzle creatures whose existence once inspired a continent of legend. You turn toward the ocean once more, feeling the ground shift beneath your feet, as if hinting at the world that lies beneath the waves. There, deep below, rise the submerged ridges and forgotten plateaus that once reignited the mystery of Lemuria among scientists and dreamers alike. Sunken ridges and ancient plateaus. A gentle wind lifts around you as you return to the ocean's edge, the horizon painted in soft shades of lavender and blue. The waves move with an unhurried rhythm, brushing lightly against the shore, as if they are breathing alive, ancient, and thoughtful. As the tide recedes, the sand glimmers faintly beneath your feet, and you sense the presence of something far below the surface, something massive, something old. You step forward, and once again, the world shifts around you. The sea dissolves into light and shadow, and you begin to drift downward into the deep. The water's pressure does not touch you, only the quiet surrounds you, vast and tender. Ahead, the seafloor rises like the spine of a sleeping giant, an immense structure stretching hundreds of kilometers beneath the Indian Ocean. This is the Reunion hot spot, a volcanic plume that has shaped islands, ridges, and plateaus across millions of years. Its legacy is enormous, so enormous, in fact, that it helped sculpt landscapes now buried far beneath the waves. You land softly upon a towering underwater ridge. Its summit lies thousands of meters beneath the surface, yet its presence feels monumental. The rocks are dark, rugged, and layered, shaped by forces too slow for human perception, but too powerful to ignore. As you place your hand against the basalt, you feel the faint tremor of geological memory, the pulse of a world constantly reshaping itself. You look to your left and see another structure rising from the gloom, the Laccadive Ridge stretching northward like a ghostly pathway beneath the ocean. To the east, the Chagos-Laccadive Plateau spreads wide, an immense submerged platform dotted with ancient volcanic remnants. And far to the south, like a continent-sized echo, lies the Kerguelen Plateau, which you walked upon in an earlier chapter, quiet, massive, and mysterious. All around you, the ocean floor appears strangely familiar, strangely shaped, as though the earth once arranged itself differently, as though these towering mountains and broad plateaus once basked beneath sunlight instead of darkness. You feel a soft stirring of wonder. Could these submerged ridges be the remnants of ancient lands? Could they hold fragments of a vanished world? It was this sense of awe that early geologists felt when they first mapped these underwater formations. Before the theory of plate tectonics matured, the shapes seemed to hint at something more, something almost continental. The Laccadive Ridge, with its elongated spine, reminded some of a drowned mountain range. The Mascarene Plateau, stretching beneath Mauritius and Réunion, looked like a fragment of land broken off from something larger. And the Kerguelen Plateau, massive beyond comprehension, appeared to some early researchers like the remains of a sunken continent. For a time, the possibility stirred genuine scientific curiosity. Perhaps the Earth had once held land where only deep sea exists today. Perhaps ancient maps whispered truths overlooked by modern scholars. Perhaps human legends preserved faint memories of coastlines long since drowned. But as the mysteries deepened, so did the questions. You walk across the ridge, and the quiet shifts around you. You begin to sense something puzzling, something that does not align neatly with any single explanation. Some sections of the ridges are volcanic, created by eruptions from the Reunion hotspot tens of millions of years ago. Others contain odd fragments of continental rock, not enough to form a continent, but enough to raise gentle questions. Did fragments of ancient crust drift here? Did volcanic activity lift and later drown portions of land? Or are these ridges purely volcanic with no connection to lost continents at all? You kneel by a cluster of shimmering crystals embedded in the basalt, zircon grains perhaps some dating back billions of years. How did such ancient minerals find their way into younger volcanic formations? Scientists debate this, each hypothesis incomplete, each explanation revealing another layer of complexity. Some argue that pieces of continental crust were trapped, melted, and incorporated into rising magma. Others suggest that long-forgotten microcontinents drift beneath the ocean, too small to map clearly, but ancient enough to confuse geological signatures. A few propose that the ocean floor in this region carries memories from Gondwana, the supercontinent that once held India, Madagascar, Antarctica, and Australia together before breaking apart. You stand slowly, feeling both the clarity and uncertainty of geology washing over you like a tide. The Earth is old, far older than any human story, and its memory is written in stone heat and folded layers of time. Yet, even as scientists decipher these clues, the Indian Ocean refuses to give a definitive answer. No entire continent lies here. No great lost land the size of Lemuria ever occupied this basin. And no civilization could have walked upon these ridges. Most were underwater millions of years before humans appeared. But the ridges themselves remain haunting. Their enormity is unsettling. Their shapes feel meaningful. Their geological signatures hint at deep processes still not fully understood. You drift farther along the plateau's edge. The terrain becomes steeper, plunging suddenly into an abyss. The water grows darker, colder, but still you feel nothing but calm, like gliding through the quiet of a forgotten cathedral. And then, in that darkness, something inside you reflects softly. Perhaps the mystery of Lemuria was never about finding a perfect, intact continent beneath the sea. Perhaps it was about the way the Earth's hidden structures evoke a sense of deep time, of forgotten ages, submerged landscapes, and the unimaginable scales on which our planet evolves. The ocean floor rises and falls like the breath of the planet. It reminds you that continents drift, mountains sink, islands rise and vanish. It reminds you that our world has worn countless shapes, many lost to water, wind, and time. And maybe, just maybe, human memory carries faint echoes of those shifts. You ascend slowly, leaving the ridges behind. The water brightens, turning pale blue, then silver. The ocean surface sparkles above you, and when you break through at last, the sky welcomes you with soft golden light. You float peacefully, listening to the quiet slap of waves against your shoulders. Beyond the horizon lie islands whose people hold their own stories of sunken worlds. Polynesian voyagers who speak of drowned homelands, Indonesian traditions recalling lost kingdoms beneath the waves, and Pacific cultures whose myths resonate uncannily with the idea of Lemuria, stories separated by oceans, memories separated by continents, yet aligned in mysterious ways. You breathe slowly, letting that possibility rest gently in your thoughts. Myths across the Indian and Pacific Oceans. A warm breeze moves across your skin as you find yourself drifting over the vast expanse of the Indian Ocean, the waves below reflecting soft hues of gold and violet from a fading evening sky. The sea stretches endlessly in every direction, dotted here and there with faint silhouettes of distant islands. You feel weightless, carried by the same winds and currents that once guided ancient voyagers who crossed these waters long before written history began. As you descend toward the surface, your vision shifts, and suddenly you're standing on the shoreline of a small island, lush, fragrant, and touched by the gentle roar of surf. The air feels heavy with stories, as if every grain of sand has absorbed centuries of myth. Coconut palms lean toward the sea, their fronds swaying like quiet witnesses. The sun dips lower, washing the world in amber light, and you begin to hear faint voices chant legends and memories woven through the ocean's breath. This is where you discover something unexpected. Across the Indian and Pacific Ocean's cultures, separated by thousands of miles, share stories of lost lands, vanished kingdoms, and sunken homelands, tales so similar that they stir the same curiosity once sparked by Lemuria. You walk along the shoreline listening. On the island of Madagascar, elders speak of long-lost lands swallowed by the sea, places where their ancestors once lived, before great floods forced them to migrate. Some legends describe ancient cities now lying beneath the waves, visited only in dreams and stories. Far across the sea in Indonesia, stories of Sunda land linger, an immense region that once connected many of the islands before rising waters buried plains, forests, and early settlements. Fishermen whisper of lights beneath the sea, of structures glimpsed during extreme low tides, and of ancestors who walked on land that now belongs to the ocean. You close your eyes and listen closer. In Polynesia, the stories grow even more haunting. The people of the Pacific remember Hawaii, Avaiki, and other ancestral homelands described not merely as mythic origins, but as real places that once existed before sinking beneath the ocean. These stories tell of voyagers who fled rising seas, carrying with them their culture, language, and traditions. Some describe islands swallowed overnight by earthquakes and waves. Others speak of slow, sorrowful drownings of entire lands as the water crept inward, generation after generation. Different islands, different names, yet echoes of the same story repeat. You open your eyes and find yourself now in Polynesia, surrounded by towering volcanic cliffs, clothed in green. The scent of tiare blossoms floats through the air. As you follow a path into the forest, you hear a soft voice, an elder recounting an old tale under the glow of torchlight. His words are slow, melodic, like waves rolling onto shore. He tells of a homeland beyond the horizon, a vast island where the first ancestors lived. When the land began to sink, they carved boats from sacred trees and sailed into the open ocean, led by stars and prayers. They carried with them songs, stories, and genealogies, memories of a world lost to time. And then he says something that makes you pause. These stories are not dreams, they are memories. You feel a ripple of wonder because those same words carry through countless traditions across the Indian and Pacific worlds. In Sri Lanka, in Malaysia, in Micronesia, in Samoa, in Tamil Nadu, the theme repeats: a once great land destroyed by water, remembered in fragments and stories. You walk deeper into the forest, letting these echoes surround you. There is no single explanation for why so many separated cultures share memories of sunken lands. Some scholars believe these tales reflect the dramatic sea level rise that occurred After the last ice age, when melting glaciers flooded coastal plains around the world, lands that once supported early humans in large numbers were drowned beneath more than 100 meters of rising water. Shorelines retreated for centuries, forcing migrations across enormous regions. Perhaps you consider the memory of those ancient migrations survived. Perhaps the trauma of losing homeland after homeland imprinted itself in myth and song. Perhaps legends of Lemuria and Kumari Kandam reflect collective memories of real geological events. But as you ponder, other theories emerge. Some researchers propose that these stories arose independently, shaped by similar experiences in island cultures vulnerable to earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanic eruptions. Others suggest that ancient traders and voyagers carried stories across vast distances, allowing myths to mingle and merge. Still others entertain fringe ideas that these tales point to unknown civilizations, lost to time worlds more advanced or widespread than archaeology currently acknowledges. You breathe slowly, letting both wonder and caution settle gently in your mind. There is no firm evidence that these mythic lands were real continents or home to advanced ancient societies. Archaeology shows no great kingdom beneath the waves matching the size of Lemuria. And yet geologists have mapped vast regions of submerged coastline stretching thousands of kilometers, where early humans once walked and settled. These drowned lands may not have been civilizations, but they were homes, places where people lived, hunted, worshipped, and raised families. They had rivers, forests, and ecosystems now erased by time. Suddenly you sense the heart of the mystery. The line between history and memory is thinner than we often realize. You walk onto a cliff overlooking the sea. Below you waves break in slow white curls against a hidden reef. The sun has set and only a soft blue glow remains. As the night deepens, the ocean becomes a vast mirror reflecting scattered starlight. You feel a gentle pull inside you, an awareness that myths of sunken lands are not merely tales of physical geography. They are stories of human resilience, remembrance, and loss. They carry the emotional truth of ancient people whose worlds were forever changed by rising seas. And yet a question lingers, like a thin curl of mist on the wind. If so many cultures preserved memories of drowned lands, if their stories align across thousands of miles, if the Indian and Pacific Oceans both hold ancient submerged landscapes, could there be something more to the legend of Lemuria than geology alone can address? Not a continent in the literal sense, not a civilization as imagined by mystics, but something deeper, an echo of real ancestral experiences woven into myth through countless generations. You watch the stars reflected in the water. The ocean is calm, vast, and full of secrets. Somewhere beneath those waves lie the remains of countless ancient worlds, none matching the grandeur of Lemuria, yet all touching the edges of human memory. You turn away from the cliff with a slow breath. Ahead lies another layer of the puzzle, one not in myth, but in the ancient genetic pathways of real peoples, whose migrations across oceans may hold the faint imprint of forgotten homelands, DNA migrations and forgotten peoples. You begin this part of the journey drifting through a warm twilight, standing on the deck of a quiet vessel, gliding across calm waters. The Indian Ocean spreads around you like a vast jeweled tapestry, deep cobalt, near the center lighter, near the distant shores. The air is gentle, the stars emerging overhead in a soft scattering of silver. As the boat rocks with the steady rhythm of the waves, you sense a subtle truth: this ocean has carried humanity for tens of thousands of years. Its surface is peaceful, but beneath it lie the ancient pathways our ancestors once followed. The wind continues to whisper as you lean over the railing, watching faint ripples spread across the dark water. You begin to see not just waves, but traces, shadows of ancient migrations, the silent journeys of forgotten peoples whose footsteps now lie beneath layers of sand, coral, and time. DNA research, you realize, is a lantern held over the deep past. It reveals stories, once invisible stories of movement and connection, long before the first cities rose or the first chronicles were written. You breathe slowly, and the world shifts around you. Suddenly you stand on the southern coast of India. The night is warm, and fishermen sleep beside their boats. Behind you lie the ancient cultural hearths of the Dravidian world. Before you stretches the dark sea. You sense the spirits of early seafarers who once left this very coastline, guided only by stars, wind, and instinct. Thousands of years ago, people here crossed the waters that lead to Sri Lanka, to the Maldives, to the eastern shores of Africa, and beyond. Modern genetic research shows a surprising truth. Deep links exist between the peoples of South India, Madagascar, and even parts of Southeast Asia. These connections are older than written history, older than most mythologies, and they hint at migrations across the Indian Ocean that were far more extensive than once believed. You walk along the beach, the sand cool beneath your feet. The waves gently wash up, erasing your footprints as quickly as you make them. And in that rhythm, you feel something ancient and familiar, the steady beat of human movement across generations. As you follow the shoreline, the scene shifts softly once more. You find yourself on the shores of Madagascar, watching the sunrise paint the sky with golden light. Fishermen push their slender boats into the surf, chanting rhythmic prayers. Their features reflect a mix of ancestries, some from Africa, others from far to the east. It is here that one of the most extraordinary mysteries of human migration reveals itself. Genetic studies show that the Malagasy people descend not only from Africa, but also from Southeast Asia, specifically from what is now Indonesia, thousands of miles away, across perilous waters. Long before compasses, charts, or written records, you feel astonishment rise in your chest. How did early Austronesian sailors reach Madagascar? What compelled them to cross such vast waters? And how did they navigate so precisely without instruments? Anthropologists believe these voyagers carried plants, tools, musical traditions, and language across the ocean, elements that survive today in Malagasy vocabulary, agriculture, and culture. Their journey stands as one of the greatest feats of early seafaring in human history. Yet even with this knowledge, deeper questions remain. Why did these voyages begin in the first place? Were they accidental, or were they part of a larger, older tradition of exploration? You step back, feeling the gentle breeze of the early morning pass over your shoulders. You sense the presence of those long-ago sailors, not as mythical Lemurians, but as real people whose courage and knowledge were profound. And in their movements you see the faint outline of the Lemuria legend. Not a single continent, but a network of ancient pathways, human threads woven across islands and oceans. You begin walking inland, following a trail that leads through thick forest. In the shade of towering trees, you reflect on the patterns revealed by DNA. These patterns show something striking. The spread of humans across the Indian and Pacific Oceans was not random. It followed consistent paths connecting cultures separated by thousands of miles. It mirrored, in a way, the myths of lost lands and sunken origins. In Southeast Asia, genetic markers point to migrations from earlier populations swept away by rising seas at the end of the Ice Age. In Polynesia, genetic signatures show connections to ancient homelands now submerged beneath the waters of what was once Sunda and Sahul, huge land masses that bridged countless islands before the seas rose. You pause beneath the shade of a towering baobab and let the forest's breath surround you. It becomes clear how memories of drowned lands, lost coasts, and disappearing islands might have taken root in the human imagination. Entire regions that once supported human life were swallowed by the sea, forcing migrations across vast distances. These traumatic events, passed down by oral tradition, could have transformed over millennia into tales of great lost continents. Lemuria may not have been a single physical land, but something happened, something profound and widespread that remains written in the genetics of millions of people. As you walk deeper, you begin to sense the intersection of science and myth. DNA does not point to an ancient super-civilization or an advanced lost world beneath the sea. Instead, it reveals long-forgotten connections, subtle migrations, and human journeys that archaeology alone cannot capture. And yet, the mystery remains. No one fully understands why certain genetic markers appear in unexpected places. No one knows for certain whether ancient sailors carried cultural memories of lands now drowned. No one can definitively explain why myths of sunken homelands echo across Tamil, Polynesian, Indonesian, and East African traditions. Science offers theories well-grounded, rational, but the cultural memory that lingers through myth suggests something more subtle and emotional, something deeply human. You reach the top of a hill overlooking the forest canopy. The sun is setting now, casting long shadows across the landscape. Birds call out as they settle for the night. A warm, golden silence fills the air. You breathe in slowly and let the mystery settle around you like a soft cloak. Perhaps Lemuria persists not because of geological evidence, but because human history is older and more interconnected than we imagine. Perhaps the legend echoes a deeper truth that our ancestors crossed oceans, survived cataclysms, and carried memories of the world as it changed beneath their feet. And perhaps beneath the waves lie fragments of coastal settlements, forgotten islands, and hints of early human presence waiting to be discovered. You step down from the hill, the twilight deepening around you, and the stillness of night gathering like a warm embrace. Ahead lies another layer of the mystery, one that plunges beneath the sea once again. But this time you will explore the underwater ruins and enigmatic structures that some claim hold the remnants of civilizations lost to the ocean. The search for lost civilizations beneath the sea. Night falls gently around you as you stand at the edge of a quiet shoreline. The waves lap against the sand with a rhythm that feels ancient, almost meditative. The sky is a deep velvet blue, the moon a soft silver disk casting drifting reflections across the water. As you breathe slowly, you sense the presence of something beneath the surface, something old, almost forgotten, waiting patiently in the dark. You step into a small wooden boat. The water rocks you gently like a cradle. With a slow push, you drift away from the beach and into the shimmering expanse of the ocean. The boat glides over calm waves, and the world grows quieter, softer, as though the sea is inviting you to listen. This is where the search begins, not for Lemuria itself, but for the traces of early civilizations that may have once stood proudly on lands now swallowed by the ocean. You close your eyes, and when you open them again, you're standing ankle-deep in the water off the coast of Tamil Nadu, India. The sun shines gently as fishermen cast their nets, and behind them rise ancient temples carved with intricate detail. The wind carries the smell of salt and incense. For generations, stories have circulated about sacred cities lost beneath the waves here, stories that once inspired explorers and archaeologists to look beneath the surface. And then you see it. Just beneath the waterline lie the faint outlines of stone structures, blurred by silt but undeniably geometric. You wade closer. Blocks of carved rock rest in shallow depths, almost perfectly aligned. These are the submerged ruins of Mahabalipuram, discovered after a tsunami revealed their presence. Though not a continent, not a city of Lemuria, they whisper of ancient settlements drowned slowly over centuries. Temples' walls and stone platforms lie beneath the gentle surf echoes of a past pulled downward by shifting tides and monsoons. You feel a stir of awe, soft, deep, and quiet. This, you realize, is what fuels the imagination. The ocean does swallow cities. It erases coastlines. It conceals human stories in its restless depths. You step back into your drifting boat, and the world shifts again. Now you are gliding over the waters near the Gulf of Cambay in western India. The sea here is darker, deeper, and filled with swirling currents. In the early 2000s, sonar scans revealed what looked like geometric patterns, rectangles, straight lines, and grid-like shapes. Some researchers suggested they might be ruins of a sunken urban settlement older than the earliest known Indian cities. Others argued they were natural formations created by geological forces. No solid conclusions emerged. But the idea took hold. Could early human settlements lie hidden beneath silt and tidal debris, bearing witness to climate shifts thousands of years ago? You drift downward, now gently descending beneath the water. The light fades to a soft teal, then to a muted green. The seafloor appears through the haze. You see stones scattered in patterns that hint at structure, but also at randomness. You cannot be sure. It is beautiful, perplexing, and strangely quiet. The ocean is a master of ambiguity. You rise again, the water shimmering around you. Now you travel eastward far across the sea. You arrive near the shores of Japan, where clear blue water reveals another enigmatic structure, the Yonaguni Monument. Under the surface lie massive stone terraces, sharp angles, and stair-like formations carved with uncanny precision. Some believe the structure is the remains of an ancient, unknown civilization dating back more than 10,000 years. Others insist it is entirely natural, a rare geological formation sculpted by tectonic forces and erosion. You swim slowly along its edges. The stone feels smooth beneath your fingertips. Channels cut across the rock. Steps lead upward into darkness. At times it feels unmistakably human-made. At other moments it feels like the work of patient, indifferent forces, waves, quakes, and time itself. You breathe out softly. The mystery remains unresolved. You drift once more, carried on a current as gentle as sleep. The landscape beneath you changes again. The Indian Ocean gives way to the Arabian Sea to the Pacific. In every region you see the same patterned submerged ruins whose origins are debated underwater stones that invite wonder and deep-sea ridges that remind you how much the earth has transformed. You pause over another site, Dwarka, off the coast of Gujarat. Stories from ancient Indian texts describe a magnificent city built by the god Krishna, later swallowed by the sea. Some archaeologists have discovered structures offshore, calling them remnants of an old port or settlement. Others believe the connection to mythology is symbolic rather than literal. Still, the idea persists. The city beneath the sea draws both believers and skeptics, each captivated by its quiet beauty. You rise once more, your body drifting upward through shafts of shimmering light. The surface breaks gently around you as you look out over the horizon. The sea stretches endlessly in calm silence. This is the moment when the boundaries between myth and science blur, not because evidence is lacking, but because the ocean itself hides so much. The human imagination, confronted with the grandeur and mystery of the underwater world, fills the silence with stories of lost civilizations, forgotten homelands, and drowned kingdoms. And yet, as you rest in this moment of observation, the truth remains elusive. No underwater site discovered so far proves the existence of Lemuria. No ruin matches the description of a vanished continent. No city of advanced ancient culture has been found intact beneath the waves. Instead, what humanity has uncovered are fragments, pieces, hints, structures both natural and human-made, ruins from rising seas and geological upheaval, memories preserved in stone but without clear stories to explain them. You breathe slowly, letting the calm night surround you. The mystery, you realize, is not about finding a literal lost continent. It is about recognizing how much of human history lies hidden, erased by rising seas, shifting earth, and the passage of time. Perhaps Lemuria is not a single place beneath the sea, but a symbol representing all the drowned lands, forgotten peoples, and sunken settlements that once existed across the earth. As you float in the gentle sway of the waves, the night deepens, the stars multiplying in the sky above. The water cools slightly. The world grows quiet, settling into a peaceful stillness. You turn your head toward the east, where another mystery awaits, not in the ocean, but in the way Lemuria has evolved in modern culture, transformed by imagination, spirituality, and popular fascination. Lemuria in modern pseudoscience and pop culture. The night has grown deep and quiet by the time you return to the shoreline. Moonlight glides softly across the waves, turning the ocean into a long, shimmering sheet of silver. The wind has slowed to a faint whisper, brushing gently against your skin, as though inviting you into another hidden chapter of Lemuria's story, not one written in ancient stone or myth, but in the modern imagination. You sit at the edge of the water, listening to the calm, rhythmic wash of the tide. In this peaceful silence, the story shifts. You begin to sense how Lemuria, once a fragile hypothesis in the minds of 19th century naturalists, slowly grew into something altogether different, larger, more colorful, more fantastical, not because of evidence, but because the mystery became too alluring to let go. You rise slowly, and the world around you transforms. Gone is the quiet beach. Now you stand in a dim 20th century bookstore, its shelves towering above you like walls of forgotten knowledge. The air smells of old paper and ink. A small lamp casts a warm glow over a table covered in books, thick volumes with titles stamped in faded gold, some creased from years of reading. A few curious readers linger nearby, searching for meaning in the worlds these pages create. One book opens itself before you, its pages turning with a faint whisper. Inside you find an image of Lemuria, transformed, a place no longer bound by geology or zoology, but rewritten as a utopian world inhabited by advanced beings, luminous cities, and harmonious societies. This Lemuria has little in common with the early scientific theory. It belongs instead to the realm of modern pseudoscience, New Age mysticism, and spiritual reinterpretation. You turn another page. Here Lemuria becomes a continent, placed by some writers not in the Indian Ocean, but across the Pacific. Atlantis merges with it in imaginative retellings as if both belong to a shared lineage of great vanished civilizations. Some describe Lemurians as gentle giants with heightened senses, capable of telepathic communication or spiritual awareness, long lost to humanity. Others portray them as ancestors of all modern cultures, spreading wisdom across the globe before their homeland sank beneath the sea. You pause, absorbing the extraordinary leap from science to myth-making. What began as a hypothesis explaining lemur migration was reshaped into a metaphysical origin story for humanity. And yet, you feel no judgment, only a soft curiosity. Why did people remake Lemuria in this way? Why did it shift from scientific speculation into the spiritual dreamscape of the modern age? As you ponder, the scene fades and you find yourself in the 1960s. Soft neon lights glow through the foggy night streets of San Francisco. The air is thick with the scent of incense and the faint echo of guitars. New spiritual movements gather in candlelit rooms filled with meditation cushions, dream catchers, and books on chakras, karma, and cosmic evolution. In these circles, the legend of Lemuria finds new life. You sit among them for a moment, feeling the calm, hopeful energy of the group. They speak softly of ancient wisdom lost to time, of civilizations that lived in harmony with nature, of possibilities untouched by the violence and divisions of the contemporary world. Lemuria for them represents a longing, a yearning for a gentler human past, a symbol of unity rather than separation. Even now, decades later, those ideas continue. In online forums, workshops, and spiritual retreats, Lemuria is invoked as a metaphor for higher consciousness, healing, and forgotten truths. The mythology continues to evolve. Some imagine Lemurians escaping into the Earth's interior. Others believe their spirits or energies guide humanity subtly from unseen realms. For many, Lemuria exists not as history, but as a form of emotional refuge, a story of a more peaceful age. You breathe slowly, hearing the soft murmur of these modern ideas as if carried on the wind. They are fanciful, imaginative, unbound by evidence. But they also point to something deeply human, the desire to believe that the world was once kinder, that knowledge was once purer, that humans once lived in balance with the earth. And yet, the questions return. Why Lemuria? Why this legend rather than another? Perhaps it is because Lemuria never had fixed boundaries, clear evidence, or rigid structure. It was always fluid, half science, half possibility, and easily reshaped by imagination. Unlike Atlantis, whose location Plato described in vivid detail, Lemuria could exist anywhere or nowhere. Its ambiguity was a blank canvas onto which people painted their hopes, fears, and beliefs. You wander slowly through a modern museum, now its halls dark, except for soft pools of light illuminating exhibits. One display features early theories from 19th century naturalists. Another shows theosophical diagrams. A third highlights the rise of Lemuria in popular fiction, from early pulp magazines to modern fantasy novels. The museum guide, Calm Gentle, explains how Lemuria has appeared in films, television shows, video games, and comic books. In some stories, it is a kingdom of powerful sorcerers. In others, a realm of ancient technology. Sometimes it is depicted as an underwater utopia, sometimes as a lost cradle of human evolution, sometimes as a mythic memory of Earth's distant past. Each version says more about the creators than the lost land itself. You pause at a final exhibit, a simple plaque that reads Lemuria, a story shaped not by what we found, but by what we hope to find. The words stay with you as the lights dim and the museum dissolves into the quiet of night. You are back at the shoreline, the moon hanging low and full. The soft roar of the sea returns like a voice that has traveled through centuries. You sit in the sand once more, the grains cool beneath your hands. The modern myths of Lemuria swirl gently in your mind, far removed from science, yet connected in a subtle way to universal human curiosity. And then you breathe, feeling the gentle weight of skepticism settle alongside wonder. There is no evidence that Lemuria ever existed in the form imagined by popular culture. No advanced ancient civilization has been found beneath the waves, no spiritual beings, no crystal cities, no remnants of forgotten technologies. And yet, the myth persists not because it is true, but because it fulfills a longing for truth that lies beyond the reach of archaeology. You lift your gaze toward the horizon. Something in the darkness calls you forward, not to fantasy, but to a deeper layer of scientific inquiry, one that examines the geology of impossible continents themselves. The geology of impossible continents. The night is cool and still as you walk along the quiet shoreline, the moon casting a pale silver ribbon across the sea. The waves roll in with a soft hiss, smoothing the sand in long, gentle strokes. You pause to listen not just to the movement of water, but to the timeless hum of the earth beneath your feet. In this tranquil moment, you feel the vastness of geological time, immeasurable, ancient, and indifferent to human years. Ahead, the landscape begins to shift. You step from the familiar sand and suddenly find yourself standing upon a great slab of reddish earth. The ground beneath you is warm and solid, textured with the memory of millennia. You are no longer on a beach, but wandering through a vast geological museum, an imagined space carved from the secrets of the earth. Massive rock layers rise like cathedral walls, each stratum a page in the planet's deep history. The air carries a faint scent of minerals, and the silence feels sacred as though no sound should disturb this place. Here you begin to unravel the scientific truth behind continents, how they move, change shape, break apart, and reassemble over unfathomable spans of time. And you begin to see why the geological Lemuria, as imagined in the 19th century, could not exist. You walk slowly between towering rock formations that glow softly in the moonlight. Every layer you pass represents millions of years' epochs when the earth looked nothing like it does today. You run your hand across a seam in the rock, feeling its texture shift from rough volcanic basalt to smooth metamorphic stone. This contrast alone tells a quiet story. Continents are made not of one kind of rock, but of many complex, ancient, and profoundly stable. Modern plate tectonics shows that true continents cannot simply sink beneath the ocean. Their buoyant crust, rich in granite and lighter minerals, floats like wood upon the denser mantle. Oceans, on the other hand, rest upon heavier basaltic crust that sits lower, forming deep basins, which means this simple truth whispers from the stones around you. Continents cannot be swallowed whole. They can break, drift, tear, and fragment, but they do not disappear beneath the sea. And so the scientific idea of Lemuria, a vast landmass bridging India, Madagascar, and Australia, became impossible once geology revealed the dynamics of Earth's crust. You pause before an enormous map carved into the floor, glowing faintly with shifting colors. This is the record of Gondwana, the ancient supercontinent that once held Africa, South America, Antarctica, Australia, India, and Madagascar in a single embrace. You watch as the continent begins to move. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the massive plate cracks. India pulls away like a drifting leaf. Madagascar splits and turns gently like a forgotten stone. Australia slides eastward over millions of years. The shapes shift, merge, and separate with elegant patience. This, the rock beneath your feet, tells you is how continents travel. Lemuria, as a single continent stretching across the Indian Ocean, could not fit into this model. There is no missing landmass between India and Madagascar, only the deep ocean floor created not by land sinking, but by volcanic spreading at mid-ocean ridges. Yet, as you look more closely, something intriguing emerges. The Indian Ocean basin is not uniform. It is riddled with plateaus, ridges, microcontinents, and fragments, pieces of ancient crust embedded within younger volcanic formations. Mauritius, the Mascarene Plateau, the Kerguelen Plateau, all contain trace elements of continental rock-puzzling geologists and inspiring curiosity. You walk to a smaller rock formation, glowing softly at the edge of this geological chamber. It is labeled Mauritia, a microcontinent proposed by modern geologists. Only fragments remain buried beneath lava flows and submerged beneath the sea. Its rocks date to a time when Madagascar and India were still fused. Mauritia is tiny compared to the Lemuria of myth, but it proves something important: small pieces of continents can survive in unexpected places. But they do not resemble vast lost worlds. They do not form cradle civilizations, and they do not match the scale once proposed for Lemuria. The stones speak softly, firmly. No geological evidence supports a continent the size of Lemuria in the Indian Ocean. And yet, as you stand in this hall of ancient earth, another whisper reaches you, gentler, more mysterious. There are anomalies, small ones yet persistent. Granite found beneath volcanic islands where none should exist. Zircon crystals, billions of years old, scattered in sands of young islands. Deep crustal structures that behave like remnants of continental blocks. Submerged mountains that rise in patterns that tease the imagination. These anomalies do not rewrite geology, but they hint at a deeper complexity, an earth shaped by processes we do not yet fully understand. You step closer to a glowing map showing sea levels over the last 20,000 years. Blue becomes gold, gold becomes green as ancient coastlines rise from the water. Here you see something profoundly important. Much of the Indian Ocean basin was never a continent, but vast regions thousands of square kilometers were once above water, not continents, but lands, coastal plains, islands, river deltas, settlements, all swallowed when the Ice Age ended and oceans rose over 120 meters. You see ancient human pathways swallowed slowly, villages erased, hunting grounds drowned, forests claimed by the sea. You realize how easily cultural memory of such loss could transform over thousands of years into myths of great lands disappearing beneath waves. You step away from the map and look once more at the towering stone walls, the story of the earth, written in silence. Geology is clear Lemuria did not exist as a single landmass. Yet geology also acknowledges that fragments of ancient lands lie hidden, that coastlines were destroyed, and that human memory outlasts physical landscapes. And so you breathe in the calm truth: science dispels the physical Lemuria, but it cannot fully erase the echoes, the human longing for origins, the biological puzzles, the fragments of submerged lands, the myths born from genuine geological events. You step back onto soft earth. The geological chamber dissolves. You are once again standing on the quiet moonlit shoreline, the ocean stretching before you in gentle stillness. Ahead lies the penultimate layer of the mystery, not geological, not biological, not historical, but cultural and emotional. A question not of evidence, but of memory. Echoes of an ancient memory. Darkness settles around you like a soft velvet cloak as you continue your journey along the quiet shoreline. The waves move with a slow, peaceful rhythm, each crest rolling gently toward your feet before dissolving back into the sea. Overhead, the stars shimmer like distant lanterns, steady and comforting. Their soft glow casts pale, glittering trails across the water, as if guiding you onward into the depths of memory. Tonight feels different, deeper, as if something in the air has shifted from physical evidence to something more intangible, yet no less real. You take a step and suddenly the world around you transforms. You find yourself standing in a vast, dim hall carved from stone, though no human tools seem to have shaped it. The walls hum faintly with the resonance of ancient songs, and the floor beneath your feet feels worn smooth by generations of footsteps. This place is not literal. It feels instead like a symbolic chamber of memory, a space where humanity stores stories that older generations could not bear to lose. You breathe in slowly, and the hall flickers with images. A great flood swallowing coastlines, families fleeing rising waters, villages drowned in slow creeping waves, fertile lands disappearing beneath stormy tides, green plains turning to seabeds, mountains breaking apart, islands shrinking over generations until only their names remained. You stand still, listening. The hall seems to whisper. Not every vanished world was a continent. Not every lost land was vast. But each disappearance left an imprint, a deep emotional scar that cultures carried forward. For thousands of years, humans lived close to the ocean. They watched the tides, honored the monsoons, built homes near river mouths and shores. When the Ice Age ended, the water rose and rose, sometimes slowly, sometimes in sudden catastrophic pulses. It swallowed millions of square kilometers of habitable land across the world. You watch as ancient people families, tribes, small communities retreat inland. You hear their songs mourn the loss of their drowned homelands. Stories born in grief soon evolve into legends, sagas, creation myths, and epics. Tales of lands that disappeared beneath the sea, tales of kingdoms lost. Tales of ancestors forced to begin anew. In your chest, a gentle ache rises. Here in this hall of memory, the legend of Lemuria begins to feel not like a literal continent, but like a collective remembrance, a mythic vessel carrying emotional truth from a distant time. You walk slowly through the chamber, and the flickering visions shift again. Now you stand among ancient Tamil poets who describe a land called Kumari Kandam, lost to the sea. Their voices, soft and lyrical, fill the hall with echoes of their sorrow. These are not stories of fantasy, but of land eaten by the ocean, a trauma woven into Tamil cultural identity across thousands of years. Next, the scene becomes a Pacific island. Polynesian voyagers stand on a shrinking coastline, chanting prayers to ancestors as the sea takes their land piece by piece. The name of their homeland, Hawaii, becomes more mythic with each passing generation. Then you see Indonesian traditions of Sunda land, Malagasy stories of lost homelands, flood myths from Sri Lanka to New Zealand to the coasts of East Africa. Everywhere water is the force that reshaped lives, cultures, and memory. You place your hand against the warm stone wall of the hall, and you feel it trembling with these shared memories: sorrow, displacement, resilience, and survival. The stories come from different places, but they resonate with the same quiet longing. And suddenly, something becomes clear. Perhaps Lemuria is a myth, not because it is false, but because it is too large, too symbolic to be tied to a single place. Perhaps it is an echo of countless real events stretched across continents and centuries. A name that gathers scattered fragments of memory into one haunting image. You step deeper into the hall. A soft breeze moves through the space, although no windows or doors are visible. It carries the faint scent of salt water and old earth, like standing between the past and the present. In this quiet moment, the five-step structure of the mystery emerges around you, subtle and gentle. You feel the discovery, the threads of similarity between distant cultures. You feel the surprise, the puzzling alignment of flood myths and drowned lands stories across the world. You feel the hypotheses scholars proposing: global sea level rise migrations and cultural connections as explanations. You feel the inconclusion, the lack of definitive evidence tying these memories to a single lost land. And you feel the skeptical reflection, the idea that Lemuria might represent something deeper, a symbolic woven tapestry of human memory, rather than a geological truth. The hall grows dimmer as you walk its walls, flickering with images fading like dying embers. You pause as another vision appears. This one is gentler. People sitting around a fire thousands of years ago, sharing stories of the land where their grandparents once lived, a land now beneath the surf. They describe it with pride and longing. Each telling changes the details slightly, shaping the story into something larger, more poetic, more symbolic. Perhaps the story becomes a tale of a great ancient kingdom. Perhaps it becomes a myth of wise ancestors. Perhaps it evolves into a legend of a vanished world bathed in light and harmony. Over centuries, these stories merge, blend, and reshape themselves into something unified: an archetype of a lost land, a memory, an echo, a dream passed from one culture to another, transformed by each retelling. You step into the center of the hall and look up. Far above you is a ceiling painted with brilliant blue light, like the surface of the ocean seen from below. It ripples, gently shimmering, as if to remind you what is lost can still cast reflections. And perhaps that is why Lemuria has endured, not because it was real, not because it was proven, but because it represents the human need to anchor our identity in something ancient and meaningful. Because deep beneath evidence and archaeology lies something the earth cannot measure: the heart's memory of ancient loss. You breathe slowly as the hall fades around you. The air grows cooler. The stars return overhead. You are once again walking along the tranquil shoreline, the waves rolling in with their soft, soothing rhythm. Ahead lies the final chapter, one that draws all threads together, not to solve the mystery, but to rest with it gently on the quiet edge between imagination and truth. The continent that lives in the imagination. The night has settled deep and quiet around you, draping the shoreline in soft darkness. The waves move with a slow, steady grace, brushing against the sand as though whispering a lullaby meant only for you. Above, the stars shimmer like scattered embers from some ancient cosmic fire. The moon hangs low, its silver glow washing across the water, with the gentlest of touches. You stand at the edge of the sea, feeling the cool sand beneath your feet. This is the final stretch of your journey, a place not of answers, but of reflection. A place where the mystery of Lemuria finds its resting place not in stone or science, but in something quieter, softer, more human. As you breathe in, a warm breeze passes across your face and the world around you begins to shimmer. The shoreline fades, then returns. The stars drift, then steady. You realize this moment lies between waking and dreaming, between knowledge and imagination. It is here that the story of Lemuria feels most alive. You begin to walk slowly along the beach, and each step seems to guide you deeper into a peaceful trance. Thoughts of scientific theories, submerged plateaus, DNA pathways, and ancient myths drift through your mind like distant waves. But none of them demand conclusions. None press for a final verdict. Instead, they settle gently inside you, forming a mosaic of possibilities. As you continue walking, the soft hum of the ocean begins to change. You hear faint echoes, voices carried by memory, wind, and water. They come from every direction, and yet they feel like a single chorus. Tamil poets speaking of Kumari Kandam, the lost cradle of their culture. Polynesian voyagers recalling Hawaii, their drowned ancestral homeland. Indonesian traditions whispering of Sunda land, swallowed by the sea. Victorian mystics describing Lemuria as a spiritual refuge. Scientists exploring microcontinents, ridges, and ancient crust. Migratory DNA patterns pointing to forgotten journeys across vast oceans. All these echoes blend into one soft, ever-shifting melody, a melody of loss, a melody of longing, a melody of wonder. You pause and listen. In this gentle composition you sense the heart of the mystery, the one element that has endured long after scientific theories have changed, long after esoteric ideas have faded, long after myths have evolved. Lemuria lives not in the earth, but in the human imagination. You feel the truth in this. The idea of Lemuria has survived not because of evidence, but because it fills a quiet space within the human spirit, a space shaped by yearning for origins, for unity, for a connection to something ancient and profound. You walk farther, the sand cool beneath your soles. The shoreline curves, guiding you toward a place where the moonlight reflects like a silver road across the water. You follow it until you reach a small rise, a natural dune shaped by countless tides. You settle onto it gently, feeling the sand shift beneath your weight. From here the sea seems endless, calm, infinite. You close your eyes, and the waves speak. They tell the story again, not with detail, but with feeling. Long ago something was lost, not necessarily a continent of impossible size, not a civilization of supernatural beings, but something real. Shorelines, islands, coastal plains, homes, memories. The rising seas of the ancient world swallowed countless places where human communities once lived, and the memory of that loss carried through generations became myth, legend, and longing. In Tamil Nadu, it became the story of a drowned kingdom. In Madagascar, a tale of ancestral lands swallowed by storms. In Polynesia, a memory of a homeland beneath the waves. In Southeast Asia, an echo of a world that once stretched wider than today's seas. And in the Western imagination, it became Lemuria, a single name for all the world's lost lands. You open your eyes slowly. The ocean stretches before you, shimmering in the moonlight. The discovery of Lemuria began as a scientific puzzle. The surprise came from species scattered across continents with no clear explanation. Hypotheses grew: land bridges, lost continents, ancient homelands. The result was inconclusive. Evidence dissolved under the weight of new science. And the reflection remains a gentle sense that some mysteries lie not in the earth, but in our own need to understand our place within its vast ancient story. As you sit in the quiet night, you sense that Lemuria's true significance lies not in whether it physically existed, but in what it symbolizes. A world humans once knew but lost. A connection between peoples separated by oceans. A memory of deep time carried through myth and imagination. A longing for wholeness in a fragmented world. A reminder that history is larger, more mysterious, and more emotional than we allow ourselves to believe. The tide creeps closer, touching the base of the dune with its cool fingers. You feel no urgency, only peace. The sea comes not to erase, but to soothe, to smooth the boundaries between what is known and what is dreamed. You rise slowly, your movements soft and unhurried. You descend the dune and walk along the water's edge once more. The waves roll gently across your feet, grounding you in the present, while whispering of the past. Ahead, the horizon glows faintly, a sign of dawn approaching, a soft transition between night and light. You take a long, steady breath. As the first hint of morning colors the sky, you realize your journey through Lemuria has led not to certainty, but to serenity, to the understanding that mysteries do not always ask to be solved, sometimes they simply ask to be honored. You look out one last time across the vast, calming sea. The water shimmers, the sky warms, the mystery remains. But now it rests gently in your hands like a quiet dream you can return to whenever you need to feel the ancient world breathing beneath your feet. With a final peaceful inhale, you step back from the shoreline, carrying the echoes of Lemuria with you, soft, lingering, eternal.